final days of summer slipped quietly into autumn. The vineyards around the hills of Judea were heavy with grapes. The fig trees bowed low, and the air carried the sweetness of ripened pomegranates. All around the village of Bayat El, families prepared for the coming of Rosh Hashanah, the day of judgment, the day the world itself was said to be born anew. Inside the homes, mothers baked honey cakes, their warm fragrance spilling into the streets. Fathers polished shofars, testing their sound with quick, sharp blasts. Children chased one another with excitement, clutching apples they would soon dip into golden honey, symbols of hope for a sweet new year. But not everyone felt the sweetness. On the edge of the village lived Yonatan, a shepherd. His flock grazed peacefully on the hillsides, yet inside, his heart was stormy. That year had not been kind to him, or perhaps he had not been kind to that year. He remembered the fights with his neighbor over a boundary stone. He remembered ignoring the poor man who asked him for bread. He remembered staying away from prayer, turning instead to his anger and silence. And now, the season of return had come. The air itself seemed to whisper of judgment. One evening, as the oil lamps flickered in the synagogue courtyard, the villagers gathered to hear the words of the old sage, Rabbi Eliyahu. His beard was white as snow, his eyes deep and searching, like someone who had seen both sorrow and mercy. The crowd hushed as he raised his voice. Children of Israel, Rosh Hashanah is near. Do you know what this day means? It is not merely a festival of cakes and apples. It is the day when all creation stands before the King of Kings. Every soul is remembered, every deed is weighed, the gates of heaven are opened, and the world is renewed. A murmur swept through the crowd. Some felt awe, others fear. But Rabbi Eliyahu was not finished. He leaned closer, his voice softening into a story. There was once a mighty king who ruled from a palace of marble and gold. His throne was high, his gates guarded, his courtyards dazzling. To see him was nearly impossible. Petitioners needed wealth, power, or perfect words. Most trembled even at the thought. But once a year, the king did something extraordinary. He left the palace. He walked into the fields where farmers worked, where shepherds watched their flocks, where children played in the dust. There were no guards, no gates. The king smiled at everyone, rich or poor, wise or simple. He listened to their words, not as a judge seated high, but as a father among his children. In the field, there was no distance, only closeness. The people stirred. Some whispered, others nodded, but one man felt as if those words had been spoken only to him. Yonatan. That night, he lay awake under the stars, the words echoing, "The king is in the field." He thought of his failings, his regrets, his silence. Could it be true? Could the King of the universe truly be near, not far in the heavens, but here, walking among his people, waiting for a single word of return? Before dawn, Yonatan rose. He took his old shofar, patched and cracked, its surface worn smooth by years of use. With slow steps, he climbed the hill that overlooked his flock and the village below. The valley was wrapped in silence. A cool wind stirred the olive branches. The first rays of light painted the sky with gold. Yonatan lifted the shofar. His hands trembled. His breath caught in his chest. He thought of his neighbor whom he had wronged. The beggar he had ignored, the prayers he had left unsaid. His heart pounded with shame and longing. Then he blew. The sound that burst forth was not polished, not perfect. It was raw, broken, like a cry torn from the depths of his soul. A cry that said, "I have stumbled, I have failed, but I long to return." The sound rose higher, echoing across the valley, startling birds from the trees. The villagers below paused in their morning tasks. Mothers hushed their children, farmers dropped their tools. Even Rabbi Eliyahu lifted his eyes. For that one cry carried more than sound, it carried truth. And in that moment, Yonatan felt it. The king was listening, not to his failings, not to his shame, but to his heart, the pure cry of a soul seeking its maker. Tears blurred his eyes, but his chest grew light, for he understood. This was the gift of Rosh Hashanah. The world was being renewed, and so was he. Later, when the village gathered for prayer, they spoke of the shepherd's shofar. Some said it sounded like thunder, others like a weeping child. But all agreed it had stirred the heavens, for Rosh Hashanah is not only the birthday of the world. It is the day when the king leaves his palace and enters the field, waiting for every soul to take a single step toward him. And the shofar? It is not merely a trumpet. It is a door, a key, a cry that says, "The king is near. Come, return, begin again."
Ancient and wise, wisdom blooms on the desert skies. Time is the